This is a secure Cyber Connect podcast with Jay Adamson and Warren Atkinson, where we're joined by information, cybersecurity, talent, and technology professionals who share their journeys, unique perspectives, and offer advice and guidance. Our topics on this episode will be cybersecurity, AI, and automation. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Marius Poskus. Marius is a Chief Information Security Officer at a leading fintech organization, a distinguished cybersecurity leader and board advisor, and is renowned for his expertise within the AI governance and secure technology adoption. His strategic insights have empowered organizations to strengthen their security posture, whilst effectively navigating the complexities of AI integration. And Marius' commitment to advancing the cybersecurity landscape and advising vendors on developing innovative products that meet industry demands is what sets him apart from many of his peers. In his spare time, Marius also enjoys being one of LinkedIn's leading voices and most passionate and outspoken advocates of calling out any poorly written, misleading and highly unrealistic job descriptions that he comes across online, a subject that as cyber search consultants, we can both fully relate to and get behind. Marius, welcome to the Secure Cyber Connect podcast and thank you for joining us. It's great to have you on the episode.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
So, always we ask our guests to give us a very brief high-level overview of the key things that we're going to be exploring in our discussion today.
Yeah, I think you kind of highlighted, I guess, there's a few things that are, I think, prominent in the way I think industry is changing. We're no longer talking, I think, about trying to protect our organizations at all costs. We are trying to understand why issues happening in the first place. We are looking about how we helping business to make informed decisions. I think cybersecurity as a whole industry is changing and is shaping and going into new frontiers. We're talking a lot more about resilience, how we maintaining business operations while bad things are happening. And I think that's the direction we are going towards. You kind of touched a bit. All of the organization seems to be having sort of an AI arms race and everyone's sprinting towards AI adoption. But actually, how do we do it securely and allow business to leverage AI with making sure that we make decisions with risk at heart? I think that's where we can come and help and highlight the potential issues that businesses might face.
And we'll certainly be discussing that in more detail shortly. I think, again, typically we've always asked our guests to share something that they may be proud of or excited about that isn't typically on their LinkedIn profile.
Well, I think the one thing that, it's not probably visible to most of the people, but I think, we kind of touched a bit about LinkedIn a bit. I think one of the things that I'm always proud of, when I early started my career, I think there's been a lot of people who offered advice, who offered their time. And I think the one thing that's always been asked of me is to pass it forward. So actually, some of the posts that I make, some of the stuff that I share with the audiences, the feedback that I receive back, not necessarily in comments, but sometimes in private messages, it always makes it worthwhile, helping people, guiding people, helping them to achieve success in their own careers via whether it's mentoring, whether it's offering advice, whether it's just guiding and making sure people understand the intricacies of security leadership, security, sort of their career advancement has always very been rewarding. So I think that's one of the things I'm really proud of.
That's brilliant. And it's something that I've been following for quite some time and want to commend you on that, Marius. And I'm just curious to get an understanding of what significant challenge you faced in your career that perhaps shaped your perspective on cybersecurity now and why you sort of open a door for others, for instance.
Yeah, I think normally the challenges are that it takes a while to understand, and I guess you need to go into and have some battle scars to understand how security is different, because so many times I've seen leadership talking about tools or the best tools, or there's a lot of talk in underground sort of places where people are addressing what's the best tool to solve that problem. And I think it takes experience to understand that leveraging tools or trying to find the silver bullet does not happen and does not necessarily translate from one organization to another. So actually building bespoke security programs and aligning bespoke solutions to specific business problems will tend to vary from organization to organization. And that takes, as I say, experience and battle scars to understand and learn, and then be able to advise people. We always talk about in security, it's people, processes, and only then technology. You have to make sure that you have the right people first, You have to build the right processes in place. And only then you can look at technology that can help you solve some of these problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that strategy level as well. Here's something that we spoke about a few times off camera, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Look, Marius, we know that AI is set to dramatically transform the overall cybersecurity landscape, particularly in areas of threat detection and response, in terms of speed, accuracy, efficiency of the processes. How do you see AI transforming cyber? And again, maybe with some particular insights into how that would impact the threat detection and response specifically.
Yeah, I think there's obviously, I want to call out, first of all, there's one important thing we have to distinguish in AI sort of adoption. I think organizations who are thinking to replace human with AI, they're going it about the wrong way. Because I think at this point in time, you should not, and you would not like to rely on AI to make the final decision, because we still know it's prone to whether it's hallucination, whether there's any other problems, prompt ingestion and things like that. But AI can be a great tool to sift through vast amounts of data and correlate that data and provide tips for people. So I think if you think about leveraging AI to enhance and allow people to achieve more with their time, that's a great way. And especially if we're talking about security, when we're talking about solutions like security operations, logging and monitoring, investigations, where you have thousands and thousands of gigabytes of logs. Now, AI to be able to correlate and find anomalies within vast arrays of data, it can be very helpful for you, but you have to make sure, and I think that there's a very important thing here to call out as well. People can leverage AI, and it seems that the more we will leverage AI, the more skills we're going to lose. And an important point is what happened with various things that happened with AI is we still need human to be able and capable to verify AI's output. So it still needs specific skills, and those skills will become more and more, I guess, important, because just having gotten an AI output, you need to be able to verify and confirm that output is correct and legitimate, instead of just pushing it out there and allowing people to use it. We've seen examples. Chevrolet released chatbots and they sold the car for $1 and it was legally binding contract and they couldn't get out of it. So some of these things, before you push out into production, you need to consider various applications of it.
And in terms of, I suppose, organizations measuring the effectiveness of these AI tools and mainly looking at the metrics, what sort of metrics should they be considering and ensuring that obviously they're achieving their goal, their security and their business goals?
Well, I think there's a few things obviously to think about. First of all, is AI can be split out into a couple of things. So we're talking about open source AI, you're talking about ChatGPTs, your bots, your code. So they're great tools to work in terms of LLM, help you provide answers, but you should never use proprietary or PII data, because they are open source models that can potentially share highly sensitive information across the models. So you have to think about which applications require data security and data separation. So you have to think about use cases. For example, marketing, yes, it's fine to use ChatGPT. Now, in your development, you can't use ChatGPT. You need to use your private models. So it's about leveraging, I think, a few things you have to think about. You have to leverage cost of running AI models and compute requirements versus the speed and agility that you need. Because you have to understand as well, if you build these huge models that can go into billions worth of context, now if you are using it in a chatbot and the model will take, say, more than a couple of seconds to answer a question, that becomes user impacting. So you have to leverage how much is going to cost, the speed, and then you have to think about the accuracy. And that's why these things, whenever you pull one specific string in terms of accuracy, you might reduce the speed. So each applications will have to think about what's the most important. Talking about, for example, chatbots, you might need to leverage more on the speed side and maybe give away something in the accuracy, because you don't want to impact user to wait, say, 10 seconds for an answer. So it depends on applications. You have to think about and build those use cases plans and then apply governance. We are talking organizations currently building internal AI ethics committee, internal AI governance processes, policies. How are we going to determine the bias in your AI? How are we going to determine ethical boundaries that we don't want to escape? Because you have to understand also, now, depending what data you're going to train that model in, if you get a subset of data that's predominantly using on some specific applications, it will inbuilt its data bias. Now, people were laughing, but Meta was considering training their models on Facebook posts. Now, imagine what can come out of it. All of a sudden, all of these models will say the Earth is flat, because that's what people are talking about on Facebook. So you have to consider all of these implications. There's various other models. We've got ISO 42000 standard coming out. I've been working closely with Databricks, where they're building their AI governance framework, where it allows you to visually see how the data travels from a model and which controls you need to apply in order to protect that data. Because data, you have an input data, you have data that builds the features in a model that you need to prevent it from changing. You have the prompt injection and all of that. There's a lot of controls that you need to consider before you deploy AI.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just on that a little bit more, what's the sort of the benefit of having that visual aid?
Well, I think the visual aid allows you to understand, because as I say, in that Databricks model, there are 11 steps from the beginning of the AI to the end. So in terms of data input, then you have data manipulation, you have data that's within the model. So it allows you to understand what kind of controls at which level you need to provide in order to make sure that this model does not hallucinate, does not interfere with the ethical boundaries, and is not subject to prompt injection.
That makes sense. And obviously, when it comes to the ethical use of AI, we need to ensure that organizations perhaps will have guardrails in place as such. So I'm just curious to gain your perspective in terms of what essential components are most effective for AI security frameworks inside organizations. And how can organizations perhaps balance and align governance with regulatory compliance and industry best practice?
Yeah, I think it's about understanding. I think, first of all, I always say, whether it's security, whether it's any other function, it's a consultative function to the business that allows business to make informed decisions. So how we can shine the light and create a compelling narrative so people understand the problems and the risks we are facing when we're adopting AI. I think we have to play a very fine balance, because from legacy point of view, security has always been the one that's blocking things. We don't want to block things. We just want to allow business to leverage AI, but doing it securely. We don't want to just shout. No, we want to shout how we can help business to leverage AI with security in mind. So I think it's about understanding processes and building, building blocks inside the organization. As I say, you can start with whether it's ethics committee, AI adoption committee. It's bringing various business units in a conversation and into the fold of understanding how we can leverage AI, how we can leverage it securely, and with regulation in mind. I think the one thing that's going to change over the next year or two, we're still very early at the sort of regulation and legality point of view. I think the one in California just been declined the AI standard. So I think they are rewording it. So I think how this is going to shape in terms of regulation, there's loads of interesting various aspects to understand. Because one thing that, for example, I'll give you a very important example. So if your organization is collecting PII, and you all of a sudden decide to use that PII in trading models, GDPR says that every single person has the right to be forgotten. Now, if you use that data to train the model, how do you remove that training when person asks to be forgotten? And that's one thing that I think the regulation will need to solve in the near future, because currently there's no workaround for it.
No, that's interesting. And are there any frameworks that you perhaps would advise organizations to use as a starting point?
I think you would always look at ISO standards, so ISO 42001 for AI governance. And then another very helpful point is always build out the AI top 10. So I think that's another great point. And they have some great documents about how to think about AI adoption. So I think these two standards or these two sort of documents can greatly help you on that road.
That's great. And we've seen a lot of MSSPs, for instance, and professional service organizations really invest in the AI adoption. But we're also seeing small to medium-sized organizations that have on a 24 or 48-month journey to develop their own internal house functions. And they're looking to perhaps leverage AI. So I'm just curious to gain your perspective in terms of what automation is out there, or what process can help significantly advance security operations centers, and which of those tasks are most effectively automated, for instance.
Yeah, I think you always have to think about, I think it's a very important thing, as we touched about human interaction. So any tasks or any processes that you have in place that can be repeatable and can be done without human interaction, that stuff can be automated. But I think the key point is you need to build in business logic or business knowledge in place, because we're talking about even sometimes simple things like impossible travel alerts. Now, normally you get a lot of them in the SOC, which basically what they mean is that if someone logs in now, if a user logs in from UK and then 5 minutes later, their IP address all of a sudden shows from America, well, that's impossible travel. Nobody can travel within 5 minutes from UK to America. But you understanding that, for example, maybe we in the business use a VPN. Maybe our VPN IP address block is in the US. So if someone logs in from UK and then all of a sudden they turn on their VPN, it will show that you are in US. So knowing that business logic and how can you negate those incidents, that's part of where you can potentially build in and provide AI context. Now, building internal process documentation, we're talking about this new level of RAG. So RAG in AI is the way that you can inbuild that business level knowledge and allow to automate some of these processes. Anything that you can provide sort of automation and enrichment, like, again, I touched on IP address. So any incident that happens to have, for example, part of the evidence is IP address. Now, if you can enrich that IP address information with reputation IP address, where this IP address is coming from, because normally that information is not there provided. So if you can connect something like Virus Total or any other threat intel information that provides enrichment about IP address, you can give an analyst a plethora of information at his fingertips as soon as the incident is created. So that enrichment is another way of leveraging automation to allow people to solve more problems and close incidents without searching stuff, providing investigation packages and downloading maybe logs from virtual machine if the incident was from there. So it's just about thinking about specific scenarios, and automation can become like a building, like a tree structure. If that happens, do this, and you can automate if that sort of scenarios in your estate.
And I certainly think there's huge benefits of automation, especially for security operations teams. But what do you feel the impact is going to be on security operations professionals, and how can they adapt to overcome that impact?
Well, I think the biggest problem we'll have in security operations is that companies are scaling out and they are expecting people to do more with less time. I've heard, especially, I guess, not necessarily internally, but especially there's horror stories in MSPs who are reducing team numbers and maybe leaving one guy on a night shift trying to balance maybe 15 clients. So imagine if 15 clients have an incident pretty much at the same time, and there's one person dealing with those 15 incidents. The level of burnout and stress and that can become very problematic. So I think it's about balancing act. It's about building, as you say, we touched about automation, AI, how we can help people achieve and do more, and only as a tip of the iceberg where we need to make a human decision, only then it comes to a human. But I think I think there's going to be a few posts I'm preparing for SOC as well. I'm always a proponent with a couple of things. Some of the MSPs, I think, are going down the wrong direction because everyone is talking about metrics. Metrics, they're all shouting from the rooftops, their time to respond metric. Or we respond to incidents within 5 minutes. The problem is, one of the things is that all of those metrics usually showcase, as part of that metric, the way they count, it includes automation. Now, if you automatically close an incident or you automatically assign ownership to that incident, that doesn't tell me that. I don't want that in part of the metric because it's an automation. It doesn't tell me how quickly you are responding. It's just automation. And secondly, I think too many MSPs are racing towards that metric without talking about quality. I don't care how quickly you respond. I want to make sure that you respond correctly, because if you put pressure on people to respond as quick as possible in time, chances are they will make mistakes. And if they make mistakes in an incident, there's big things could be missed and you could be dealing with a lot of fallout afterwards. So instead of you actually responding instead of 3 minutes, you can respond within 6 minutes, but actually do the quality work. That's much more important, I think, than actually talking about time to respond timings.
Yeah. Classic SLA issues similar to the support days with much higher stakes for sure.
Yeah.
And look, it's clearly essential from everything you said that AI and automation technologies are implemented with the right strategies and the right governance, but obviously most importantly balancing this with the correct human management to get the best out of them. And flip the conversation over now to more cloud and application security. What would you say the key considerations for developing a good cyber strategy within more tailored cloud environments, especially given many of the unique challenges that these present?
I think talking about cloud or any kind of security strategy nowadays, I think the most important point is, I kind of touched a bit. If we look at the statistics, what Greg van der Gaas been shouting from the rooftops is that the statistics show that every year we are spending more on cybersecurity, but the breaches keep rising up, which basically means that we're not addressing or we're not moving the needle in the right direction. And the problem is, I think most of the businesses, what they're doing it wrong is they're spending more money to either solve more vulnerabilities, close more incidents, or solve more configurations without actually understanding why they happen in the first place. They're not doing root cause analysis. Now, the goal, what you want to do is actually understand why bad things happen in the first place and how we can build proactive security program that looks at the broken business processes that introduce vulnerabilities, incidents, and misconfigurations in the first place. So your goal in the cloud to me is that you need to inbuild security into your Terraform or any infrastructure as code deployment pipelines that define security standards. So what do I mean is that, say you have a security standard, how your virtual machine or server should look like. Now, if DevOps, SRE, or any infrastructure person who's building that virtual machine wears a way out of the security standard, this pipeline will fail and they will not be able to deploy this server because they stayed away from security standard. So you build security standards in essentially infrastructure pipelines that define security standards. So instead of fixing things that have been misconfigured, you prevent from building things that are misconfigured. So you get into the right early stages of development, embedding security standards in your essentially enterprise.
And do you see any value in CTEM, so continued threat exposure management, as opposed to just relying on vulnerability management, for instance?
I think there's always benefits there. I think the biggest problem is with any of these attack surface management and all of that is that it very rarely, these solutions again define business context or risk appetite. They are very generic in terms of they will perform the same analysis for this organization as this, but maybe these different two organizations have very different risk appetite, and that's where it's hard. It's just hard to understand business context, asset criticality, and what does that mean? Because exposure as I always say to people, if you have vulnerability on your critical server versus a receptionist laptop, that means two different things, even though it's the same vulnerability, but they mean completely two different things. And how we can respond to them is completely two different things as well.
We know obviously that CISOs are facing an overwhelming amount of ever-changing and more specific challenges every single day. And how do sort of vendors and how do these cyber vendors get a better understanding of how to align their products with what sort of challenges that the CISOs are facing? And I suppose what are some of the issues and pitfalls that these vendors are encountering when they're developing their go-to-market strategies? How can they be avoided and ultimately adopted?
I think there's a couple of things obviously there. You need to have very clear USP, because I think sometimes obviously some of the vendors and some of the sort of product managers, they try to boil the ocean. You have to narrow down what your solution is. Too many times I think organizations have vision in their head. We're going to address this market, but then they talk to so many people and so many people have different ideas or different visions of their product. And then they go into the feature sprawl that they're going to say, oh, we're going to solve everyone's problems, which is wrong, and you're never going to achieve that. So I think I've been talking to various organizations, for example, like look what SNCC happened as well with them a couple of years ago. I was working with SNCC. They were great at doing code security, and then all of a sudden they ventured into doing cloud security and trying to compete with Viz. And obviously that proposition very quickly died because I told the guys, I was like, what you were thinking? So you have to be very, as I said, very clear direction in your SP and nail down specific aspect. You have to be very clear because you can't play around two ways about between platform and trying to address 10 different things or one part of it. So I think some of the companies as well, they go towards the platform route via acquisitions. And acquisitions is another very important thing. Like there are some vendors who do great acquisitions, and there are some vendors who maybe procure an amazing tool through acquisition, but if you don't invest in R&D and developing it, then you just have 90% of your workforce is sales, that tool over years or year or two becomes rubbish because you're not maintaining it. So there's a few things here to be addressed. And I always say, you don't always have to try and please every single customer. You nail down the big proportion of what you can achieve with your investment. You have to also think about how you're going to cost it, because again, there's various things about people doing via SaaS with a specific product alignment and how you're going to cost it, whether it's per seat basis, per data ingestion. You have to get it right as well, because there's tools that have been problematic in the way they costed their offerings.
No, that's brilliant. And Marius, you're part of the Secure Cyber Connect community and a number of other sort of security leadership communities. So I'm just curious to gain a better understanding of perhaps what other challenges you're seeing in the space. Specifically, what other CISOs you're struggling with at this point in time.
I think CISOs are always, I think the one thing that in communities that really helps, I think we are trying to, and I think most of these communities have been established to step through vendor jargon and vendor nonsense sales tactics. I think people sometimes, or vendors, I think sometimes should remember that the word of mouth is the most powerful thing in cybersecurity. So we develop these communities where we can talk about then the good practices and then the bad practices, and those who come in that light, I think will normally pay a big premium in terms of what negative impact does. But also it allows us to share ideas and I think share novel ways how each of us are tackling challenges. I think that this sort of leadership cyber community is so helpful in terms of people are always there to support each other and share ideas. And especially it helps because imagine I've been into a couple of these sort of CISO networking events, and then you compare, for example, my organization where I have maybe say a team of 7 or 8 people, and then you're talking with someone from a big bank who maybe has 100 people, 100 data scientists who are working on doing risk data Monte Carlo simulations in terms of their risk management. So there's a very different sort of scale, but you get to learn various initiatives, various aspects, and various unique ways how people are solving problems that you could potentially solve in a similar ways, or you can apply their lessons learned, which always is very helpful.
That's brilliant. And you invest quite a lot of time in helping others, especially when it comes to the early development. They've got quite a lot of content out there on YouTube, for instance. So I was hoping you'd be able to share a bit of advice and guidance for junior individuals that are looking into cybersecurity remit, as well as those that are senior, perhaps transition into leadership positions.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I think that whenever people start out, people are usually mesmerized with certifications and they thinking that acquiring certifications will unlock many doors. I think the way the world is shaping nowadays, connections can help you so much more, and using tools such as LinkedIn, where you're connecting with recruiters, building relationships with potentially hiring managers can help you so much more. I always say to people, I think one of the key skills how you can develop, and actually I think even Joe Head posted the other day with some of the gentlemen that he was working from university. I always say to people, use LinkedIn as your personal development blog. Share what you have learned every day. It doesn't have to be crazy, but just say, oh, I've learned this one sentence today. Now, people who are in a similar situation, maybe they don't know that fact, and you can be helping someone else while you are learning at the same time. But you will build a support network around you. And I think that's the key point. When you're starting out, Like I've been involved in caps lock for a number of years as well. And I think people who are starting out in that sort of career changing towards cybersecurity, I think sometimes not only development, but the hardest part to overcome for them is that imposter syndrome, is the amount of information, or when they see their schedule, what they're going to learn in the next 16 weeks, they always think it's impossible. So first, normally 4 weeks becomes as a sort of mental battle to tell people, yes, you can do it. Stay positive, believe in yourself. Once you go over that hurdle, then we can address it. But, I received the same advice from someone many years ago that said, I always asked, so what next certification should I do? There is no answer for anyone. If someone says you must do this certificate, they're talking bull. There is no prescribed certificate that you should do that will unlock you the next door. You have to define your own path. You have to think and find. I always say to people, like, my main advice for people is play a numbers game. Now, if I would be starting out in cybersecurity now, I would look at entry-level cybersecurity roles. Now, out of 10 roles, 8 or 9 would be in a SOC. So for me to get the first role in cybersecurity, if we talk in numbers game, SOC is the easiest way because it's the most amount of early careers opportunities available. So I would be looking at next 20 job descriptions in SOC. What are they asking? That's the type of skills or certifications I would be working towards. And then I would be building support network, whether it's WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Discord, of like-minded people who are on the same journey, who can support me and support others around, and working and building my network as well in LinkedIn of people who can potentially refer me into those positions, because I know that applying directly, it's very highly likely I'm going to achieve something. So the bigger the network I'm going to build, the more I showcase how I'm developing myself. Usually what happens is when you do that a lot and you build consistency, like Joe, that's what I'm saying. Joe posted about the guy who's been doing it, who's been on Try Hack Me and he's built a streak for 500 days. He never applied for one job. He got 12 job offers without applying to one. So you can build that momentum. Jobs will come to you. That's the easiest way to get there.
No, it's great insight and very useful, I think, for our audience to hear what you have to say on that matter, Marius. I think there's a lot. It's like anything, network is key, always. And in terms of coming to the end of the episode now, one of the questions we've asked all our guests around effective communication and really how many people in security often use analogies to explain risk and security. Would you be kind enough to maybe give us your favorite go-to analogy for simplifying technical concepts and maybe even just your favorite analogy, if you can say it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the one thing that's always one of my favorites is to say, whenever we talk about security, I think the biggest thing is for us is building accountability across the business units. So we need to make sure that we are there to advise. But security is everyone's responsibility. Development has to be responsible for their own security, same as HR, same as business development. Everyone is responsible for their own security. We are there to help them to achieve that work. But I always say, whenever we, for example, talk with development, they say, but I thought this security will do this. And I always say to them, when you left your house this morning, did someone else lock the door for you or did you lock it yourself?
That's brilliant.
Cool. So in order for you to do security, you have to take responsibility and accountability. And I think that's why we talk with C-level, because that culture comes from the top. So making sure that you align, whether it's CTO or development manager, we embed those sort of culture requirements and accountability of security. Because to me, for example, security is part of the quality. So if you want to build a quality code, you have to do it securely.
Absolutely. What does the future look like for you? What does the future hold for you and MP Cybersecure and Automate IQ also?
Well, I think for me, it's important to giving back and allowing people to flourish in their careers, giving people advice whether it's starting career in cybersecurity, whether it's advancing towards leadership, whether it's changing the narrative, and I guess going from legacy mindset to adopting the new ways of working. We're talking about how still the industry is broken, how breaches are keep rising, and what we need to do to change that narrative. So that's always on agenda. I think newsletters, podcast is about sharing prominent names within cyber industry and allowing to voice their opinions and teach people. And then some of the other ventures, I'm always interested, first of all, to learn about the vendors, building their products and helping them with their sort of go-to-market strategy, making sure that their tools align to our fellow CISO needs, sharing expertise with how many vendors I worked with, helping other organizations to understand security frustrations, especially those, we talked a lot about AI, helping organizations if they are on a journey in AI adoption, how to build AI governance program in order to adopt AI securely, and then also allowing and showcasing how business can improve their efficiency through AI automation, how we can alleviate some of the burden of manual work and manual tasks to businesses. I guess stretching all of those solutions, essentially people allowing businesses and people to achieve more with less time.
Yeah. Well, we certainly recommend to our audience that they check out the Cyber Diaries podcast and MP Cybersecurity, where you can hear much more from yourself, Marius. And for any of our listeners who want to stay connected beyond the Secure Cyber Connect community platform and the podcast, where else can they reach out to you?
I think obviously they can always ping me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. They can all find Marius Poskus as my name is or LinkedIn. Ping me a message. Do not be afraid. I think I always say to people, I don't bite. I'm always happy to offer advice. That's what I'm saying. I kind of alluded, I guess, in the beginning, but some of the posts that I made is always, it's interesting to receive positive feedback. People are thankful for my advice, and whether it's leadership, whether it's book, whether it's courses and things like that. So it's always happy to chat with people and help wherever I can them.
Well, more power to you, and thank you for everything you've given us today in terms of your insight. We appreciate it. I'd like to say thank you also to the community and all our listeners. We'll certainly have found some value in today's session. If anyone wants to continue the discussion or for a more sustained engagement, we invite you to join the Secure Cyber Connect community, where we're going to be offering a range of collaborative solutions for both technology and security professionals at no cost. These include expansive community access, cross-section mutual mentoring programs, weekly online networking sessions, and a range of exclusive interviews such as this, panel discussions and masterclasses. If you want to know more and gain access to the platform and the community and any of our initiatives, please visit secure-recruitment.com/cyber-connect/. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you guys for having me.